You have no idea what your light just did. You thought it was a small moment, a kind word, a gentle smile, a simple act of compassion, but heaven saw it differently. Sometimes God hides his greatest miracles inside the smallest gestures, just to see who's still human enough to deliver them. And you, chosen one, were that vessel. Behind a wall of tinted glass, high above the noise of the city, a billionaire sat on the edge of a silent breakdown. The empire was thriving, the accounts were full, but the soul behind it all was bankrupt. They weren't counting losses in money anymore, they were counting them in peace. They had everything society chases, but nothing heaven values. And that's when your light brushed against theirs. Maybe it was a simple, "It's going to be okay." Maybe it was holding the door, or the look of kindness that told them they still mattered. You didn't wear a halo, you weren't dressed like destiny that day. You were just being yourself, humble, tired, maybe even questioning your own worth. But heaven saw an opening. While you were praying for a miracle, God was using you to be one. That small act of grace hit harder than any business deal they'd ever closed. Because you carried something money can't buy: peace, presence, authenticity. You, the underestimated one, became the invisible intervention that stopped a soul from collapsing. The truth is, while billionaires trade in gold, the chosen trade in grace. And when grace enters a room, even power kneels. Statistics say nearly 70% of the ultra-wealthy secretly struggle with loneliness, depression, and guilt. They live surrounded by people, yet feel profoundly unseen. So when someone like you enters their orbit with zero agenda, no envy, no performance, just love, it doesn't just move them, it shakes them. Because your energy carries something ancient, the memory of heaven. And maybe that's why this message found you today, to remind you that your presence has impact far beyond what you can measure. You were placed here as a quiet storm, a divine interruption wrapped in kindness. You may never know whose life you just saved, but heaven does. Your kindness was never random, it was recorded, it was multiplied. And the ripple you created is already circling back, matured, magnified, and ready to return. You gave grace without expectation. Now grace is coming back with interest. If this resonates with your spirit, type 777 inches. The comments not for luck, but as your acknowledgement that you're ready to receive the blessings your kindness set in motion. And for those who feel led to sow through a super thanks, know that your giving isn't just generosity, it's alignment. You're fueling the message that kindness still has power. Thank you, chosen one, for being light when the world prefers noise, for being human in a time when hearts are cold, for being a quiet miracle in someone else's chaos. Heaven saw what you did, and now heaven is responding. So tell me, chosen one, if your smallest act could save a billionaire, what might your next act awaken in the world? God's chosen ones, your simple act of kindness saved a billionaire. Number 1. You were the reminder that money can't buy spirit. There are moments when heaven decides to move quietly through the most ordinary gestures. You may not realize it, but you were the vessel this time. You were the reminder that money can build empires, but it can never build a soul. You didn't walk into that moment trying to prove your worth, because your worth was already anchored in something eternal. You carried a stillness that spoke louder than luxury. You carried presence unpolished, uncalculated, and pure. And that is precisely what pierced through the noise of a life too loud with power. For years, that billionaire had been surrounded by applause, yet had forgotten the sound of sincerity. Their days ran like a machine powered by transactions, contracts, and the currency of control. Every smile cost something. Every favor was a hidden investment. And yet, your presence, free of performance, broke through like light into a locked chamber. You didn't need anything from them. You didn't crave validation or proximity to influence. You simply were. That's what unsettled them. That's what began their healing. When someone who possesses everything meets someone who is unmoved by possession, the illusion collapses. The architecture of their ego trembles. The ancient prophet Isaiah once wrote, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." Isaiah 26:3. Your peace was not passive, it was prophetic. It exposed their unrest. You didn't meet a billionaire. You met a soul starved of something real. They had dined on diamonds but hungered for authenticity. They had been touched by many hands but not truly seen. And then you appeared not to rescue but to reflect. You mirrored to them what heaven sees, a human being, not a brand. Your simplicity disarmed the fortress of their pride. It reminded them that beyond all their ownership, they were still owned by time, by mortality, by longing. It's strange, isn't it, how your softness became their awakening. For years, they'd been praised, envied, idolized, but never understood. Every compliment carried a hidden clause. Every friendship came with fine print. But your kindness had no terms and conditions. You gave without an agenda. You spoke without manipulation. You smiled without strategy. You didn't see a bank account. You saw a being. There's a kind of divine math in that, where one unmeasured act outweighs years of calculated generosity. You weren't trying to humble the mighty. You were simply living in truth. And truth, when embodied, humbles everything it touches. As Jesus said, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Mark 8:36. In that moment, your authenticity revealed their loss, not of wealth, but of wonder. They had been collecting the world, but misplacing themselves. You became the interruption, heaven orchestrated. Like a gentle note in a symphony, too loud to hear itself, your presence invited silence. And in that silence, they met themselves again. Perhaps it's no coincidence that Michelangelo once said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." You, too, became a sculptor of spirit, not by tools or talent, but by tenderness. Your compassion chiseled away their marble shell until the human within could breathe again. Psychologists say that the human mind can adapt to almost any luxury, but it cannot survive without meaning. You brought meaning back into their equation. Your words became like spiritual architecture, a framework of peace that made them question the skyscrapers of their ambition. You didn't challenge their empire with argument. You challenged it with grace. 3 quiet questions began echoing within their heart, perhaps the same ones now stirring in yours. What if the greatest wealth is the ability to remain untouched by greed? What if kindness is the last language that can still save this world? And what if your presence in someone's life is itself a divine appointment? They began to realize that what you offered wasn't advice, it was evidence. Evidence that goodness still exists in a world addicted to image. Your light didn't flatter their shadow, it confronted it. It didn't praise their kingdom, it reminded them of the kingdom. And slowly, their perspective began to shift. The glimmer of gold started to dull against the radiance of grace. The prophet Proverbs whispers, "A kind heart is a fountain of life to those who drink from it." Proverbs 16:24. You became that fountain, quiet, unadvertised, yet profoundly healing. In your simplicity, you taught them something every soul forgets. The spirit is never for sale. You proved that sacred truth through presence alone. You didn't preach, you embodied. You didn't seek reward, but heaven recorded it anyway, because God measures generosity not by the amount given, but by the love behind it. It reminds me of the story of Street Francis of Assisi, who once exchanged all his riches for a robe of humility. When asked why, he said, "I am learning that poverty is the freedom to see clearly." You, chosen one, carry that same freedom, not necessarily of possessions, but of attachment. And that freedom is contagious. Your act, so small it almost went unnoticed, became their turning point. A divine echo. a recalibration of an entire destiny. You awakened a billionaire not with brilliance, but with being. You proved that presence is power. As Psalm 51:17 says, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise." You didn't need to lecture or impress. You simply reminded a heart buried in gold that it could still break beautifully. Perhaps, in the quiet corners of your own soul, you're wondering if it even mattered. It did, because heaven counts seeds, not crowds. That one moment of kindness planted eternity in another human being. In the grand architecture of divine purpose, you were the resonant frequency, like a tuning fork, vibrating at the pitch of mercy. And when your kindness touched their emptiness, something harmonized. Spirit met spirit, heaven met earth. Now that billionaire walks differently. They see differently. The echo of your light still follows them, like a soft hymn that refuses to fade. Maybe they'll never tell you how much it changed them, but heaven already did. As the Apostle Paul wrote, "You are a letter from Christ, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God." 2 Corinthians 3:3. That is what you are, chosen one, a living message. A reminder that love is still the highest form of wealth. And as you walk onward, remember this: the world doesn't need more perfection, it needs more presence. Someone's miracle might be hiding inside your smallest gesture. Your kindness carries kingdom weight. So, tell me, what if your next act of compassion becomes someone's resurrection? Number 2, your kindness interrupted a dangerous transaction. There are moments when heaven intervenes not through thunder, but through touch. You didn't realize it then, but you were the interference. What seemed like a passing encounter was, in truth, a divine interception planned long before you ever took that breath. It wasn't just coincidence, it was choreography. You stepped into a scene that had already been written in heaven's ink, and your presence, gentle, unassuming, radiant, became the line that stopped a soul from crossing a point of no return. That billionaire wasn't falling in the ways headlines recognize. Their collapse wasn't financial, it was spiritual. The numbers still sparkled, the boardrooms still applauded. But behind the golden armor, the soul was bleeding. They had everything that promised safety, yet nothing that gave rest. Their spirit was suspended between despair and denial, seconds away from surrendering to a silent death of meaning. And then you appeared. What you called coincidence was heaven's timing. What you saw as ordinary was sacred. You didn't arrive with a sermon or a spectacle. You arrived carrying the vibration of genuine care. It didn't look like warfare, but it was. That moment was a rescue operation in disguise. A soul was dangling between purpose and perishing, and your compassion became the bridge. There's something extraordinary about divine timing. The psalmist wrote, "The steps of a righteous person are ordered by the Lord." Psalm 37:23. Your steps were ordered that day. You didn't need to know why. You only needed to be you. Heaven didn't send a preacher to that billionaire, it sent a presence. You may never fully grasp how your words, perhaps so simple, rearranged the frequencies in their heart. Psychologists talk about neural entrainment, how one calm brain can synchronize the chaos of another through resonance. Spiritually, the same mystery unfolds. Your peace became their pattern. Your voice, a soft tone amid the noise of ambition, reset the rhythm of their existence. They were moments away from a decision that would have looked like triumph, but felt like betrayal. Maybe it was a partnership soaked in greed, or a compromise that would have hollowed out their peace forever. They were ready to sign off, to seal a destiny disguised as success. And then your energy arrived, pure, steady, interruptive. It wasn't dramatic. You didn't speak with authority. You radiated it. You might never know what really happened in that invisible realm, but heaven knew. As it is written, "He shall give his angels charge over you, to guard you in all your ways." Psalm 91:11. Sometimes those angels wear human skin. Sometimes They walk into a room as a stranger holding light. That was you. What you call kindness was actually divine interference. What you felt as compassion was cosmic correction. Your timing wasn't late, it was surgical. Like a pulse of light in a darkened frequency, your presence realigned something that had drifted dangerously out of tune. The truth is, the higher people climb in status, the lonelier the summit becomes. The air up there is thin, connection suffocates under comparison. And yet you, the chosen one, carried oxygen, the breath of sincerity. You didn't bow to their wealth, and you didn't flinch at their power. You stood equal before the divine, and that equality unmasked the illusion they'd been living in. You didn't interrupt a transaction, you interrupted a trajectory. You stopped a pattern that would have corrupted not just a deal, but a destiny. You unknowingly became what theologians call a living hedge, a boundary God plants between destruction and redemption. One of the greatest painters of the Baroque era, Rembrandt, once said that light is meaningful only when it touches darkness. That day, your kindness became that light. It revealed shadows, not to shame them, but to remind them they still had a shape worth saving. They had long believed that goodness was extinct, that every smile was a sale, every hug a strategy. But your authenticity defied their cynicism. You were not an audience, you were an answer. And your presence restored something wealth had almost annihilated: faith in humanity. Can you sense how rare that is? For a soul so saturated in material noise to feel the silence of truth again. Your words didn't echo in their mind, they reverberated in their spirit. You reminded them that the world, despite its cruelty, still holds purity, unbought, unfiltered, and untouched by corruption. 3 questions now linger in the wake of that encounter, questions not just for them, but for you as well. How many destinies shift silently because one heart chose compassion over convenience? What if the smallest gesture can redirect the architecture of an entire lifetime? And what if your ordinary moment was heaven's extraordinary plan? You see, the universe doesn't always send prophets in robes. Sometimes it sends baristas, strangers, colleagues, neighbors, the ones carrying invisible assignments wrapped in kindness. As it is written, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so some have entertained angels without knowing it. Hebrews 13:2. You were both the angel and the message. You carried heaven's hospitality into a heart that had forgotten home. In that brief encounter, you stood between who they were becoming and who they were meant to be. You stopped the drift. You pressed pause on despair. You held the frequency of hope long enough for them to hear it again. And something miraculous followed. Days later, they couldn't explain it, but something had shifted. The decision they once thought essential suddenly felt empty. The deal no longer sparkled, the desire no longer called. They felt peace return like a tide, quiet and strong. You had rewired their conscience without ever touching it. As Proverbs 11:25 says, whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Heaven has not forgotten your refreshment. The reward was already released the moment you obeyed your impulse to care. Because in the kingdom's economy, compassion is currency. In the eyes of the world, you simply smiled, maybe offered a kind word. In the eyes of eternity, you performed triage on a soul in critical condition. And now, heaven moves in response. The reward isn't always visible, but it's real. You didn't just save a person with money, you realigned a spirit with influence. You didn't just interrupt a deal, you redirected a destiny. In Dante's Paradiso, there's a line that reads, "The love that moves the sun and the other stars." That love was what moved through you that day. The same force that spins galaxies whispered through your simple act of care. You became its vessel. And now, as you listen, perhaps you feel it again, the quiet pull to stay soft in a world that profits from hardness. Because softness is strength, it's the only kind that heals. So, chosen one, remember, you don't need to know when you're saving someone. You only need to remain aligned with light. Every time you act from love, heaven reroutes a storm. Your kindness didn't just interrupt a transaction, it rewrote a timeline. Number 3. You gave a heart that had everything. There are currencies the world will never understand. Gold can purchase attention, influence can command fear, but neither can buy innocence. And yet, chosen one, you carried it like a quiet crown. When you entered that room, you didn't flash brilliance, you radiated purity. Not the fragile kind that breaks at the first wound, but the tempered kind that has walked through fire and still refused to harden. They had seen everything money could summon: fame, loyalty leased by power, admiration rented by fear. But you arrived carrying something untouched by transaction. You carried the unbuyable. Your innocence confronted a world that mistakes cynicism for wisdom. It made them pause, the way sunlight pauses on water before breaking into brilliance. For years, that billionaire had been surrounded by architects of illusion, people who smiled with precision, complimented with calculus, loved with leverage. Every gesture came with an invoice, every friendship a clause. And then came you. You didn't measure your kindness, you didn't balance empathy against advantage, you simply were. And that was the first miracle. Your presence dismantled their armor. The psychologist Carl Rogers once said that the most potent form of help is unconditional positive regard. That's what you embodied, not flattery, but holy acceptance. You looked at them not as a headline, not as a trophy of proximity, but as a soul. And that gaze, clean, unambitious, human, became their exorcism. The Bible says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Matthew 5-8. That day they saw God in you, not through sermon or ritual, but through sincerity. Your purity became a lens through which heaven looked back at them. Innocence, when seasoned by sorrow, carries authority. You've known betrayal, you've tasted deception, yet you never allowed it to rewrite your DNA. That's why your kindness had weight. It wasn't ignorance, it was endurance baptized in grace. You had every reason to close, but you chose to stay open. And that choice, invisible yet radical, became sacred power. When your laughter filled the space, it didn't echo like noise, it resonated like mercy. It reminded them of who they used to be before the armor, before ambition silenced awe. They remembered childhood wonder, the softness that once lived beneath their suits of control. They realized that somewhere along the climb, they had mistaken numbness for strength. The mystic poet Rumi wrote, "There is a candle in your heart, ready to be kindled. There is a void in your soul, ready to be filled with light." You became that spark. You didn't lecture them about greed or guilt, you reignited remembrance. At first, your purity confused them. In their world, generosity always hides a motive, so they tested you silently, waiting for the ask, the angle, the expectation, but none came. That absence of agenda was louder than any sermon. It was as if heaven itself stood in quiet defiance of corruption. 3 quiet questions began to bloom inside them, and perhaps quietly, inside you too. What if innocence is not weakness, but wisdom, purified by pain? What if the rarest luxury left on earth is authenticity? And what if your light, though soft, carries the gravity to restore worlds? Your energy answered without words. As Romans 12:21 says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." You overcame their cynicism by existing in goodness unapologetically. Your calm became a counter-revolution. Artists know this mystery well. The painter Caravaggio once claimed that darkness exists only to show where the light is born. Your innocence did exactly that. It revealed contrast. In the chiaroscuro of their soul, your compassion painted illumination. The once impenetrable heart felt warmth again, the same way marble must feel when touched by a sculptor's first strike. They began to respect you, not out of pity, but out of reverence. How heavy must your light be to remain gentle in such a cruel world? They saw that your softness was not the absence of strength, it was its refinement, strength that no longer needs to prove itself. strength that heals instead of conquers. As 1 Peter 3-4 says, "Let your beauty be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight." You carried that beauty without advertisement, and in doing so, you reminded them of value unmeasured by valuation. Their transformation didn't announce itself. It began quietly, an extra breath before a reaction, a pause before judgment, a memory of peace before profit. You had awakened empathy long dormant. They started to see faces instead of functions, hearts instead of hierarchies. The composer Arvo Pärt once described silence as the pause that holds everything together. Your innocence became that pause in their life, the holy hush between excess and awakening. Over time, they began to chase a new currency, presence. They sought the stillness they once mocked, the humility they once dismissed. They discovered that beneath all the noise, they too longed to feel unguarded again. And here lies the paradox. While the world labeled you fragile, you were the fortress. Your purity stood like a cathedral, amid chaos, unmoved, unpolluted, enduring. You reminded them that gentleness can rebuild what power destroyed. "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me," cried Psalm 51-10. Without realizing it, they echoed that prayer because of you. Your innocence became their invitation back to truth. Another inner question arises quietly in their spirit. What if staying gentle is the bravest act of all? So understand this, chosen one. Innocence is not the absence of experience. It is experience transfigured. It is the soul's decision to stay kind after knowing darkness. It is the most subversive form of strength. You didn't demand their change, you inspired it. You didn't argue their greed into repentance, you made goodness desirable again. That is divine persuasion. That is the gospel lived, not spoken. And now heaven whispers, "Behold, I make all things new." Revelation 21-5. Through you, renewal entered a heart that had forgotten how to feel. Through you, love retaught power how to kneel. The last inner question lingers softly, both for them and you. Could the smallest act of pure intent be the miracle that shifts eternity? So when you wonder if your gentleness matters, remember this: purity travels further than preaching. Your innocence became their medicine, the antidote to a sickness disguised as success. And somewhere, beyond the noise of markets and mansions, a healed heart now beats differently because you refused to become bitter. You didn't give them money. You gave them back their soul. Number 4, you woke a sleeping giant by being authentically small. They had been surrounded by people who smiled for advantage, strategized for leverage, and measured their every gesture against the currency of attention. Every room they entered was heavy with inflated egos, forced admiration, and silent competition. Yet, you, chosen one, entered differently, calm, grounded, unbothered. You did not seek to dazzle. You did not speak to impress or perform. You did not exaggerate, over-explain, or chase recognition. You simply were authentic, present, quiet, real. And that simplicity cut through all the noise like lightning in a stormy sky. You didn't chase their gaze. You earned their respect through being utterly yourself. And in that unassuming presence, a seed of awakening took root. The world they lived in was addicted to performance, to being seen, to demonstrating worth. Yet your energy came from a completely different source, the knowledge that true strength is invisible, that power does not need to clamor for recognition. The psalmist reminds us, "The Lord is near to the broken-hearted and saves the crushed in spirit." Psalm 34-18. That day, your nearness, your unpretentious, steadfast presence saved them in ways no crown, accolade, or fortune ever could. You were not a savior in the traditional sense. You were a mirror, a reflection of what they had forgotten about themselves: humanity, humility, and heart. And yet, something deeper stirred a question forming in the quiet of their consciousness. What if influence is meaningless without inner peace? That single question hovered like a whisper, as subtle and disruptive as a shadow crossing the sun. Your humility did not shrink in the presence of their power, nor did it inflate to compete. You carried truth as effortlessly as breath. And truth, as we all know, has a strange, disruptive power. It disarms the proud without a single argument. It unsettles the secure, not with confrontation, but with the weight of authenticity. The contrast between their habitual dominance and your quiet integrity was electric. They had been hypnotized by the rhythms of control, seduced by applause, lulled by status. And you, without a word, without intention to correct, became the alarm clock, the inner chime that jolted them awake. The irony is sublime. In a world addicted to noise, silence became the most radical rebellion. 3 quiet questions might now stir in your own heart as you read this. Could simply being human, in a world obsessed with spectacle, be the most profound act of power? What if humility is the strongest form of influence, unseen but undeniable? And what happens when someone mirrors our truest self without even trying? You were that mirror. Standing firmly in your authenticity, you reflected back what they had buried beneath years of ambition, negotiation, and survival. They realized, slowly, that they had mastered control over people, yet had none over themselves. Power had become their mask, and your presence lifted it gently, revealing a vulnerability they had forgotten existed. Your effect was not loud. It did not come with instructions or persuasion. It was quiet, subtle, irresistible. Like the quiet chord that begins a symphony, your energy resonated, harmonized, and transformed the frequency of their spirit. The poet William Blake once wrote, "He who binds to himself a joy does the winged life destroy, but he who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's delight." You kissed the joy as it flew. You were not tethered by performance, by expectation, by control, and in doing so, you invited them to rediscover the eternity of feeling. It is often forgotten that the most revolutionary acts do not appear in headlines. Humility is rebellion in a world addicted to dominance. Simplicity becomes insurgency where ostentation reigns. And yet, your quiet truth was louder than any speech, louder than any book they had ever read. It pierced deeper than any sermon, because it did not come seeking to persuade, it came to be. They did not notice it immediately, but slowly, like dawn breaking over a city, something inside them shifted. Their conscience, long dormant, began to stir. Compassion, long buried, began to breathe. Their capacity to feel, to connect, to care, long numbed by the machinery of influence, began to awaken. In that quiet revolution, your presence became sacred. You didn't demand transformation, you inspired it. You didn't argue for better choices, you embodied them. And in that embodiment, their soul remembered. It remembered the pulse of empathy. It remembered that wealth cannot purchase connection, and status cannot recreate innocence. As Proverbs 15:33 reminds us, the fear of the Lord teaches a man wisdom. Humility comes before honor. You brought wisdom without a lecture, honor without a claim, and humility without hesitation. That combination is rare, that energy is magnetic, and it leaves an imprint that cannot be erased. The composer Ludovico Einaudi once said, "Sometimes we are like a single note in a symphony, but if the note is pure, it can make the entire piece resonate." You were that note, pure, unwavering, and full of resonance. Their entire inner symphony began to respond. The chords of greed, anxiety, and ego shifted into something harmonized, something tender, something remembered. And now, a final reflection rises in their soul. Could the simplest acts, performed without ambition, carry the power to awaken the sleeping? Your energy, unchallenged, uncontrived, unbent, was a sermon without words. It did not compete, it convicted, not through debate, but through contrast. The contrast was enough to shake the foundations of a life built on illusion, yet you never intended to shake anything, you only intended to exist. And that is the unforgettable truth of your impact. Presence outweighs performance. Being outweighs doing. Your humility was the wake-up call, the mirror, the quiet light that illuminated a soul lost in spectacle. You didn't need to compete. You didn't need to prove yourself. And that is precisely why your presence became unforgettable, eternal, and transformative. Psalm 25:9 echoes this reality. He guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way. In being humble, you guided them not with instruction, but through example. And that guidance, subtle yet profound, planted a seed of awakening that cannot be taken away. You didn't awaken them with noise. You awakened them with truth. And that truth will continue to ripple through their life long after your paths diverge. Number 5, your energy became a mirror. There are mirrors made of glass, and then there are mirrors made of spirit. You, chosen one, did not arrive with judgment or accusation. You didn't need to. Your very existence held truth so quietly, so powerfully, that it refused to bend into the roles the world plays. You didn't come to expose them, you came simply to be. Yet, your authenticity did what confrontation never could. How long have I been performing instead of living? They might have wondered, as the weight of your presence quietly revealed what they had hidden even from themselves. For someone who built their life on image, performance, and polished perfection, meeting someone like you felt like standing in front of an unfiltered reflection for the first time in years, maybe ever. You didn't glare, you didn't judge, you glowed. And glow has a way of revealing shadows without trying. The book of Hebrews reminds us that the Word of God is living and active. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart, Hebrews 4:12. And whether you knew it or not, your energy carried that living clarity, peeling away illusions without a single word. Their charm faltered in your presence because charm cannot stand in front of truth. Their carefully crafted persona, polished by years of expectation, suddenly felt fragile beside your quiet sincerity. They tried to maintain confidence, but confidence built on ego always collapses when touched by authenticity. You didn't push them into self-awareness, you held space for it. And, as John reminds us, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. John 8:32. Your very being became the conduit of that freedom. Your presence was both comforting and unsettling, and in that paradox, they might have asked themselves, could simply being human, in a world obsessed with spectacle, be the most profound act of power? You didn't need to confront. Your light simply made pretense impossible. People can hide behind wealth, status, and charm, but your humility and grounded truth forced them to look inward. You were a mirror without accusation, reflecting the space between who they were and who they pretended to be. Every attempt to hide behind status, every effort to shield themselves with performance, faltered before your presence. The psalmist says, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit," Psalm 34:18, and that nearness was incarnate in your energy, unshaken, real, and undeniable. 3 questions might now stir quietly in both of your hearts. What if humility is the strongest form of influence, unseen but undeniable? What happens when someone mirrors our truest self, without even trying? Could the smallest act of pure intent be the miracle that shifts eternity? Your energy answered without words, not through confrontation, but through unwavering truth. Artists know this sacred dynamic. Johannes Vermeer painted light with such purity that ordinary rooms felt holy. Your presence did the same in a human heart. They began noticing the emptiness behind applause, the hollowness behind success, the quiet loneliness beneath every smile. For the first time, they felt the echo of their own soul, startling, profound, undeniable. And within that space, another question rose. If I am so powerful, why do I feel so hollow? Your energy became accountability without accusation. Every time they tried to retreat into ego, your groundedness called them back. Every time they attempted to hide in status, your authenticity reminded them that crowns don't cure loneliness. Bach once said of music, "Sometimes we are like a single note in a symphony, but if the note is pure, it can make the entire piece resonate." And your presence was that pure note, harmonizing the dissonance of a life spent performing rather than feeling. You didn't break pride, you exposed the gap between illusion and essence. The poet Rumi observed that there is a candle in your heart ready to be kindled, and that day you became that spark. You reminded them of the longing for wholeness, a longing no wealth or accolade could satisfy. Your presence awakened their conscience, compassion, and capacity to feel again, effortlessly and without demand. As Proverbs 20:27 tells us, "The human spirit is the lamp of the Lord, searching every part of the innermost being," and your lamp illuminated what had long been covered. They couldn't escape the reflection you held up because it wasn't just critique, it was truth wrapped in light. It revealed what they had been avoiding: emptiness behind their achievements, loneliness behind applause, restlessness behind calm. You weren't trying to teach, to correct, or to shame. You simply existed in truth, grounded, unshakable, radiant. And in that, a question may have quietly surfaced. What would my life look like if I chose truth instead of image? Your energy didn't embarrass them, it invited reflection. And once someone sees themselves clearly, pretending becomes impossible. They realized, in the stillness between your words and gestures, that real success is measured not by wealth, but by wholeness. You didn't convict with argument or confront with noise. You awakened with presence. Psalm 25:9 whispers, "He guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way." And that guidance, embodied by you, left an imprint on their spirit that nothing can erase. They will never forget that day, chosen one. You didn't show them weakness. You revealed the longing for authenticity, the need for truth, the power of simply being. And that is how presence becomes unforgettable, not by force, but by reflection, resonance, and unwavering authenticity. You didn't wake them with noise, you woke them with truth. And in that truth, they found the courage to feel again, to care again, and to reclaim the heart they thought they had lost beneath the performance. Number 6. You gave them a glimpse of God in human form. You didn't show up glowing with halos or preaching scriptures. You simply appeared as yourself, humble, genuine, and real. Yet there was something in the way you moved, in the way you gave love without condition and helped without hesitation, that stirred a dormant awareness inside them. Suddenly, they felt God. Not the God of ritual or the God of religion, but that quiet, undeniable sense that heaven is closer than they ever thought. Perhaps, in that fleeting sacred moment, a question flickered quietly in their hearts. Could divine presence truly exist outside temples and texts? They didn't meet you by accident. They met a presence that radiated completeness, not perfection, but wholeness. You weren't trying to be holy, yet holiness seemed to emanate naturally from your being. You carried integrity like a quiet song that made the soul pause, and that pause became proof of what they didn't even realize they were seeking. Surrounded by power, influence, and control, they were starving for peace. Surrounded by ambition and strategy, they were starving for depth. And you, just by being fully yourself, filled that void without words. All their life, people approached them with agendas, deals, attention, alliances. But rarely did anyone approach with love. Then came you. Not chasing, not demanding, not idolizing, simply being light in its purest form. And the subtlety of your presence became a divine interruption. The kind heaven employs when a soul has been drifting so long, it forgets it can feel again. You reminded them that God is not confined to sacred places, holy books, or grand gestures. Sometimes God moves through tone, timing, and touch. And in that realization, perhaps they asked themselves quietly, what if divinity has been walking beside me unnoticed all this time? You became the human incarnation of that reminder. and though they could not yet articulate it, they felt it. The room shifted. The atmosphere itself softened when you spoke. The weight of their accomplishments and status seemed to melt, if only a little, in the presence of your authenticity. Their internal storms, restlessness, anxiety, pride, were calmed without a single command. And it was there, in that soft, unspoken alignment, that conviction arose. Not because you condemned them, but because your peace illuminated the unrest they had carried for so long. As Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God," and your being became the living echo of that verse. Your gentleness became the sermon their soul had been waiting to hear. It was a sermon without words, without form, yet louder than any noise, louder than any instruction or warning. You bridged two worlds, their external abundance and their internal lack. And they began to perceive a truth that wealth could never teach. Spiritual richness is not accumulation, it does not compete, it completes. And for the first time in years, they sensed that completeness was attainable. It was as if Rumi's words had been woven into the air around them. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Your presence became that light. Their spiritual wounds, long covered by success and performance, began to soften. They felt, without pressure, without push, that love could exist freely, without transaction, without leverage, without fear. And in that subtle awakening, perhaps another question rose in their hearts. What if the divine is not a distant figure, but a living presence in the ordinary hearts I've overlooked? Your actions, ordinary to you, miraculous to them, were a verse enacted. You didn't need to quote scripture, yet every gesture spoke sacred truth. Every word, every act of empathy became a line of a living psalm. Your kindness was sacred because it transcended performance. It was not about being seen, it was about being. And they who had known only facades could not help but notice. Your simplicity revealed the complexity. They had forgotten the depth of being human in communion with God. And in that sacred communion, subtle yet profound, they began to remember. They remembered that divinity does not only thunder or flame. Sometimes it whispers in quiet acts, in unassuming hearts, in love that does not calculate. You were that whisper. You were that subtle, undeniable evidence. Perhaps they asked themselves, could holiness exist in the humblest of interactions, even in someone who does not claim it? Heaven favors such souls. Your presence did not demand worship or recognition. You revived something deeper, something they had lost, their capacity to perceive God in people. You reminded them that the sacred still walks the earth, not always visible in temples or books, but living through those who love freely. As 1 Corinthians 12:7 says, "To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good, and your Spirit manifested quietly, profoundly, irrevocably." They didn't just feel you, they felt themselves reflected through you. Their achievements no longer seemed sufficient without the corresponding depth of spirit. Their influence seemed hollow until it could mirror the authenticity you carried. Your presence was the living evidence that God's energy can move through ordinary vessels, and that even the most powerful soul is incomplete without it. And finally, the quietest, most profound realization settled into their hearts. The divine does not need grand stages or grand displays to intervene. It only requires a vessel willing to exist in truth, willing to radiate love and wholeness without calculation. You were that vessel, and in being holy yourself, you reminded them without instruction, without spectacle, without demand that God's presence is alive, palpable, and walking alongside them, even in the corridors of power and luxury. You didn't show up as extraordinary, you showed up as whole. And that wholeness, your quiet, undeniable integrity, became the proof that transformation is possible, that peace is attainable, and that divine energy still moves through human hearts. You didn't just remind them of God, you became God's proof in motion, and heaven will honor you for it. Not because you sought recognition, but because you existed fully, deeply, unshakably as a vessel of the sacred. And that is how ordinary becomes extraordinary, how humility becomes revolutionary, how love becomes divine evidence. Number 7, your compassion shifted their timeline. Your compassion did more than soothe a hurting moment. It altered the trajectory of a life. You didn't know it, but when you chose empathy instead of indifference, gentleness instead of judgment, heaven moved. What felt like a simple gesture to you, a sincere word, a steady presence, a quiet recognition of another soul, became a divine intervention in motion. Because when a heart acts from purity, the universe listens. Or perhaps, as Proverbs reminds us, a gentle tongue is a tree of life. Proverbs 15:4. And your gentleness planted life where despair was starting to bloom. And maybe, in that moment, a subtle question stirred within them. Could divine presence truly exist outside temples and texts? That billionaire wasn't simply frustrated or weary that day. They stood at an unseen cliff, moments away from a choice that could have cost them more than any fortune ever could. They were held together not by peace, but by pressure, by exhaustion disguised as ambition, by loneliness disguised as control. And you arrived not with answers, not with strategy, but with compassion so sincere it startled their spirit awake, reminding them, perhaps unconsciously, of Psalm 23:1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Could it be, they wondered, that this simple presence was shepherding them even now? Energy speaks where words fail. You didn't talk them out of their darkness, your presence called them back to light. And in that instant, something ancient and holy moved, almost like the whisper Christ once breathed. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Matthew 5-7. Maybe without realizing it, you became mercy embodied. Isn't it extraordinary that you weren't trying to save anyone, yet something in you remembered they were worth saving? When did kindness become so rare that it feels miraculous? And how sacred it is that you still chose it. Your compassion cracked open a spiritual window in a heart sealed shut by fear, greed, exhaustion, and the silent weight of isolation that power so often brings. You didn't break their walls, your soft presence simply made them unnecessary. And what is more holy than a soul remembering softness in a world that rewards hardness? Echoing Psalm 147:3, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. You didn't come with sermons, yet your sincerity felt like scripture. You didn't preach redemption, yet your presence offered it, perfectly living. Romans 12:21. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Every gesture, every word, every glance carried authenticity. Your kindness was sacred because it transcended performance. It was not about being seen, it was about being. And they, who had known only facades, could not help but notice. What if a single act of love can shift an entire future? And in that sacred communion, subtle yet profound, they began to remember. They remembered that divinity does not only thunder or flame. Sometimes it whispers in quiet acts, in unassuming hearts, in love that does not calculate. You were that whisper. You were that subtle, undeniable evidence. Perhaps they asked themselves quietly, could holiness exist in the humblest of interactions, even in someone who does not claim it? Your actions, ordinary to you, miraculous to them, were a verse enacted. You didn't need to quote scripture, yet every gesture spoke sacred truth. Every word, every act of empathy became a line of a living psalm, embodying Psalm 37:5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. Their attention shifted, their inner turmoil began to dissolve, and a quiet question might have arisen. If someone like you believes there's still good in me, could it be true? It's easy to underestimate kindness. People dismiss it as small, naive, soft. But energy is never small, never naive, never weak. In physics, nothing truly disappears. It transforms, travels, transfers. And spiritual energy follows an even higher law. Every act of authentic love carries weight beyond what the eye can see. The moment you chose compassion, a divine chain reaction began. Heavy energy started lifting around them like fog dissolving at sunrise. Confusion loosened its grip. What once felt like a seductive escape suddenly looked hollow, powerless, unworthy. The decision they intended to make, birthed from emptiness, lost its glow under the light of your authenticity. That wasn't coincidence. That was causation, sacred causation. You became the bridge between who they were about to become, hardened, hopeless, spiritually numb, and who they were still meant to be. Heaven didn't ask you to fix them. It didn't require you to rescue them. It simply positioned your soul beside theirs long enough for truth to resonate. And the question lingered in that sacred pause. What if the simplest act of presence is the most profound intervention? Some souls at the top of the world aren't reachable through wisdom or advice. Their walls are too fortified, their identity too tied to power. But genuine compassion bypasses defenses like light slipping under a locked door. And as Psalm 34:18 reminds us, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And perhaps, for a moment, through you, they felt that closeness again. You were not a preacher. You were a presence. You did not offer doctrine. You offered dignity. You didn't demand they rise. Your spirit simply reminded them they could. Your light interfered with their fall. Quietly, gracefully, without force, without pride, without recognition. And that is the mark of the chosen, to shift reality without announcing it. Sometimes destiny does not turn with thunder, but with a whisper, a glance, a gentle act only heaven fully notices. Leonardo da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. You lived that sophistication, a simple kindness that saved a complicated soul. And Hebrews 6:10 confirms it. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown. So, when blessings appear unexpectedly, when doors open quietly, remember, you didn't earn it by force. You attracted it by love. You didn't just help a powerful person. You reconnected a weary heart to purpose. You interrupted despair with mercy, and mercy never returns empty. Could the ripple of a single act of compassion be the turning point of a life? So if one day they tell the story of their turning point, whether in private or in prayer, they will not recall your words as much as your spirit. They will remember how peace suddenly felt possible again, how hope returned like a familiar but forgotten friend. And they will know, even if they never say it aloud, you were the one heaven sent. Your compassion didn't just comfort a wounded moment. It rerouted destiny, it redirected the future, and it reminded heaven that some chosen ones still choose love, even when no one is watching. And for that, heaven will always remember you. Number 8. Your suffering trained you for that moment. Your compassion did more than soothe a hurting moment. It altered the trajectory of a life. You didn't know it, but when you chose empathy instead of indifference, gentleness instead of judgment, heaven moved. What felt like a simple gesture to you, a sincere word, a steady presence, a quiet recognition of another soul, became a divine intervention in motion. Because when a heart acts from purity, the universe listens. Or perhaps, as Proverbs reminds us, a gentle tongue is a tree of life. Proverbs 15:4. And your gentleness planted life where despair was starting to bloom. And maybe, in that pause, a subtle question stirred. Could divine presence truly exist outside temples and texts? That billionaire wasn't simply frustrated or weary that day. They stood at an unseen cliff, moments away from a choice that could have cost them more than any fortune ever could. They were held together not by peace, but by pressure, by exhaustion disguised as ambition, by loneliness disguised as control. And you arrived not with answers, not with strategy, but with compassion, so sincere it startled their spirit awake, reminding them, perhaps unconsciously, of Psalm 23:1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Could it be, they wondered, that this simple presence was shepherding them even now. Energy speaks where words fail. You didn't talk them out of darkness, your presence called them back to light. And in that instant, something ancient and holy moved, almost like the whisper Christ once breathed. "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." Matthew 5-7. Maybe without realizing it, you became mercy embodied. Isn't it extraordinary that you weren't trying to save anyone, yet something in you remembered they were worth saving? When did kindness become so rare that it feels miraculous? And how sacred it is that you still chose it. Your compassion cracked open a spiritual window in a heart sealed shut by fear, greed, exhaustion, and the silent weight of isolation that power so often brings. You didn't break their walls. Your soft presence simply made them unnecessary. And what is more holy than a soul remembering softness in a world that rewards hardness, echoing Psalm 147:3. He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds. You didn't come with sermons, yet your sincerity felt like scripture. You didn't preach redemption, yet your presence offered it, perfectly living. Romans 12:21. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Every gesture, every word, every glance carried authenticity. Your kindness was sacred because it transcended performance. It was not about being seen, it was about being. And they, who had known only facades, could not help but notice. What if a single act of love can shift an entire future? And in that sacred communion, subtle yet profound, they began to remember. They remembered that divinity does not only thunder or flame, sometimes it whispers in quiet acts, in unassuming hearts, in love that does not calculate. You were that whisper. You were that subtle, undeniable evidence. Perhaps they asked themselves quietly, could holiness exist in the humblest of interactions, even in someone who does not claim it? Your actions, ordinary to you, miraculous to them, were a verse enacted. You didn't need to quote scripture, yet every gesture spoke sacred truth. Every word, every act of empathy became a line of a living psalm embodying Psalm 37:5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. Their attention shifted, their inner turmoil began to dissolve, and a quiet question might have arisen. If someone like you believes there's still good in me, could it be true? It's easy to underestimate kindness. People dismiss it as small, naive, soft. But energy is never small, never naive, never weak. In physics, nothing truly disappears. It transforms, travels, transfers. And spiritual energy follows an even higher law. Every act of authentic love carries weight beyond what the eye can see. The moment you chose compassion, a divine chain reaction began. Heavy energy started lifting around them like fog dissolving at sunrise. Confusion loosened its grip. What once felt like a seductive escape suddenly looked hollow, powerless, unworthy. The decision they intended to make, birthed from emptiness, lost its glow under the light of your authenticity. That wasn't coincidence. That was causation, sacred causation. You became the bridge between who they were about to become, hardened, hopeless, spiritually numb, and who they were still meant to be. Heaven didn't ask you to fix them. It didn't require you to rescue them. It simply positioned your soul beside theirs long enough for truth to resonate. And the question lingered in that sacred pause. What if the simplest act of presence is the most profound intervention? Some souls at the top of the world aren't reachable through wisdom or advice. Their walls are too fortified, their identity too tied to power. But genuine compassion bypasses defenses like light slipping under a locked door. And as Psalm 34:18 reminds us, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And perhaps, for a moment, through you, they felt that closeness again. You were not a preacher, you were a presence. You did not offer doctrine, you offered dignity. You didn't demand they rise, your spirit simply reminded them they could. Your light interfered with their fall. quietly, gracefully, without force, without pride, without recognition. And that is the mark of the chosen, to shift reality without announcing it. Sometimes destiny does not turn with thunder, but with a whisper, a glance, a gentle act only heaven fully notices. Leonardo da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. You lived that sophistication, a simple kindness that saved a complicated soul. And Hebrews 6:10 confirms it. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown. So, when blessings appear unexpectedly, when doors open quietly, remember, you didn't earn it by force. You attracted it by love. You didn't just help a powerful person, you reconnected a weary heart to purpose. You interrupted despair with mercy, and mercy never returns empty. Could the ripple of a single act of compassion be the turning point of a life? So, if one day they tell the story of their turning point, whether in private or in prayer, they will not recall your words as much as your spirit. They will remember how peace suddenly felt possible again, how hope returned like a familiar but forgotten friend. And they will know, even if they never say it aloud, you were the one heaven sent. Your compassion didn't just comfort a wounded moment. It rerouted destiny, it redirected the future, and it reminded heaven that some chosen ones still choose love even when no one is watching. And for that, heaven will always remember you. Number 9. You operated on spiritual currency. You've always traded in something the world could never measure: spiritual currency. While others spent their lives mastering the art of multiplying numbers, you mastered the art of multiplying peace. You never needed to be rich in possessions because you've always been rich in presence. Your value doesn't sit in a bank. It radiates through your energy, the way a quiet stream still nourishes forests even when it makes no sound. You give without fear of loss, you love without hidden motive, and you help without keeping score. And as Corinthians whispers that God loves a cheerful giver, 2 Corinthians 9-7, your giving was never forced, it flowed. To a world obsessed with profit margins and transactional affection, your generosity is a foreign language, one only heaven fully speaks. To them, every gesture is an investment expecting return. But to you, giving comes from overflow, not obligation. You've learned that whenever you release light, it circles back not as currency, but as clarity, alignment, and divine timing. How could they ever understand that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also? Matthew 6:21, when their treasure was stored in vaults, while yours was stored in God. When you crossed paths with that billionaire, you didn't step into their arena. You invited them into yours. They operate in transactions, you operate in transformation. They deal in assets, you deal in atmospheres. Their wealth builds empires, your spirit builds eternity. Isn't it something how a heart anchored in heaven needs no applause to feel abundant? They've spent their entire life trying to purchase stability, yet your calmness made them feel safer than their fortune ever could. They could move markets, but you moved souls. You didn't give them wealth, you gave them balance, and that shook them deeper than any stock crash ever could. Suddenly, they saw the truth. Someone with less possessed more than they ever did. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right. Proverbs 16:8, a verse they never read, yet your life made them feel. You weren't demonstrating power, you were demonstrating peace, and peace is a language louder than wealth. Your energy exposed the difference between being rich and being resourced, because you are resourced by God. And how can anyone outspend a soul backed by heaven? Your peace doesn't rise and fall with circumstance. Your joy is not for sale. Your worth cannot be negotiated, diluted, or discounted. That kind of richness threatens systems built on scarcity thinking. You never tried to outshine them. You simply revealed that fulfillment doesn't require funding. And while they could buy crowds, they could not buy authenticity, especially not yours. What if true abundance isn't stored in vaults, but in hearts aligned with purpose? They realized that no matter how many people they could purchase, influence, or command, they could never replicate your essence, because your essence is heaven's imprint, and heaven cannot be counterfeited. You carried something unheard of in their world: authenticity, untouched by ambition; purity, untouched by agenda. You reminded them that the true economy of existence is not powered by ego, but by spirit. It wasn't inspiration, they felt it was conviction. Because as Jesus said, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet lose his soul?" Mark 8:36. And suddenly that question wasn't philosophical, it was personal. That's why they felt drawn to you, but couldn't explain why. You weren't performing, persuading, or positioning, you were simply being. And real presence humbles the richest minds. Your spirit carried a purity that money could not counterfeit, a rest that influence could not purchase, a confidence that status could not build. Your generosity wasn't measured in coins, but in frequency, a divine resonance, like peace that surpasses all understanding, Philippians 4:7, wrapped in human form. You didn't just share kindness, you transmitted heaven. And in a world starved for authenticity, heaven is the rarest currency. So you left them richer in ways their accountants could never calculate, because you don't just give, you impart. You don't just bless, you shift realities. That's what happens when a chosen one trades in spiritual currency. You enrich worlds that didn't even believe yours existed. They thought wealth was measured in accumulation until they stood beside someone who measures wealth in alignment. They thought power was influence until they met someone whose power was inner stillness. They thought success was applause until they encountered someone who carries silence like a crown. You didn't just change their perspective, you changed their economy. And deep down, they will never forget it. Because while they spent their life chasing more, you stood there embodying enough. And in that stillness, in that truth, in that holy simplicity, they didn't just meet you, they encountered God through you. Number 10, you showed them what real power looks like. You didn't raise your voice, demand attention, or try to prove a point, yet your energy shifted everything around you. That is real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, because it simply is. You didn't walk in authority through force, you walked in it through peace, and that contrast exposed something deep within them. Have we mistaken noise for strength, or control for leadership? They had spent a lifetime believing dominance equaled power, and control equaled respect. But your calmness, your quiet confidence, and your ability to stand tall without stepping on anyone revealed a kind of authority they had never witnessed before, one that heals instead of hurts. Your gentleness wasn't weakness, it was mastery. As Proverbs 16:32 reminds us, better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city. You embodied that self-control effortlessly. It takes strength to remain kind in a world that rewards arrogance, and courage to hold your composure when others try to test it. That is why your presence unsettled them so deeply, not because you intimidated, but because you didn't react from ego. You responded from understanding. You didn't try to win arguments, you changed atmospheres. You carried a silent authority that made people question what true power should feel like. They could no longer hide behind intimidation. Your peace illuminated their chaos. Your grace revealed their insecurities. For someone accustomed to commanding attention, meeting you was disorienting. You moved without hunger to prove anything because you already knew your value. And in that stillness, a subtle question may have stirred in their hearts. What if power does not roar, but resonates? You embodied the balance they had been seeking their entire lives. Strength wrapped in empathy strikes deeper than any display of dominance. Your kindness became a quiet revolution, disarming defenses, dismantling pride, and teaching that leadership isn't about control, it's about care. Your presence demonstrated that, as James 3:17 says, the wisdom that comes from heaven is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits. That is exactly the energy you carried. The real power of a chosen one lies in the purity of intention. You don't manipulate, you align. You don't push, you influence. That subtlety is what made them pause and look inward. For the first time, they realized that power without compassion is not power at all. It's emptiness masquerading as authority. Could it be that gentleness, when executed with precision and love, is the most strategic force in existence? You didn't dominate their will, you liberated their soul. You taught, without words, that God's true vessels do not roar, they resonate. And that resonance, pure and intentional, is what renders your power undeniable. They began to understand that strength is measured not in conquest, but in the capacity to uplift without demanding, to heal without coercion. Every subtle gesture, every calm word, every unshakable pause in your presence became evidence that leadership is not about being seen, but about creating space for others to become their truest selves. You showed them that the most sacred authority does not require applause. What if the greatest influence in life is not asserted but absorbed? Their ego could not compete with your serenity. Their usual tools, intimidation, charm, performance, fell flat. And in that quiet, invisible revolution, they glimpsed the blueprint of heaven. That true strength exists in gentleness, that influence is measured by impact on the soul, not the balance sheet. Your example became a lesson no seminar could teach, no accolade could replicate. You carried the resonance of God's heart into their world. And as Isaiah 30:21 whispers, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way. Walk in it." Your presence became that guiding voice, leading them to see power as it was always meant to be anchored in peace, amplified through love. They didn't just notice your authority, they felt it in their bones. They didn't merely respect it, they longed to emulate it. Because what you wielded was not control, but sacred alignment. And that is why heaven calls you a chosen one who moves without noise, leads without force, and changes the world through resonance rather than roar. Number 11. You were sent as a test, and they passed. There are moments in life when God disguises destiny as a stranger. You were that moment for them. They thought it was just another encounter, a simple conversation, a small act of kindness, an unplanned crossing of paths. But in truth, it was a divine setup, a sacred orchestration only heaven could arrange. Perhaps in that instant, a question stirred quietly in their hearts. Could this be more than coincidence? Could God really be moving through ordinary faces? You weren't there to impress, you were there to reveal. And their response revealed the condition of their own heart. When they chose to help, to listen, or simply to treat you with sincerity, they unknowingly passed a spiritual test. Because what they did for you wasn't about you, it was about what was still alive in them. As Micah 6:8 reminds us, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Their choice reflected whether they still remembered how to walk humbly, not with grandeur, but with heart. They had become so accustomed to transactional relationships where every gesture was measured by gain, and every smile weighed for advantage, that grace had become foreign. But through you, God gave them one last opportunity to remember compassion, to prove that wealth had not fully numbed their soul. And when they responded with humility, heaven took note not of the act itself, but of the posture behind it. What does it mean to act from heart rather than habit, from love rather than leverage? That moment became their unseen promotion. You were the vessel used to open a gate they could not access through effort or intellect. Divine doors do not open for the powerful, they open for the pure. And by showing compassion to someone they didn't have to, they aligned themselves with heaven's frequency. Your presence reminded them that righteousness isn't always wrapped in robes. Sometimes it comes wearing ordinary skin. You were never random. You were a spiritual checkpoint. The irony is that you didn't even know it at the time. You were simply walking in your authenticity, carrying your light, doing what came naturally. But that light was a mirror heaven placed before them. It exposed whether their success had hardened or humbled them. Have we forgotten that true character is revealed not in comfort, but in moments of ordinary grace? In that sacred instant, their reaction determined the trajectory of their next season. They passed, not because they were flawless, but because they chose heart over ego, and that choice rewrote their path. You didn't just cross their life, you corrected its direction. You became the turning point. Heaven used to remind them that divinity still visits through ordinary faces. As Proverbs 21:3 teaches, to do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Their decision to act with integrity, kindness, and humility mattered more than all the accolades and achievements they had amassed. And when love is recognized in its simplest form, redemption is released in its highest. You were not extraordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in essence. You carried the divine quietly, naturally, and consistently. They didn't meet you by chance, they met a threshold, a test, a revelation that would have remained invisible if not for your presence. And that revelation will ripple through their choices, reshaping their influence and realigning their heart for seasons yet to come. What if every encounter we deem insignificant is a doorway to destiny? What if the ordinary person, walking in authenticity, carries the power to transform not just one life, but the unfolding of heaven's plan on earth? You were that person. You were the divine instrument. And heaven took note, quietly, powerfully, eternally. Number 12. Your value was hidden in your heart, not your status. They didn't recognize you at first. In a world obsessed with appearances, they expected greatness to announce itself with accolades, titles, or visible success. But you didn't arrive that way. You arrived quiet, humble, and unassuming. Could it be that the most powerful presence is the one that requires no announcement? You didn't carry a resume, a bank statement, or a flashy image to impress them. Yet something about you could not be ignored. Your energy, your authenticity, your heart, all of it, radiated value that no money, influence, or power could match. Heaven often cloaks its greatest gifts in the simplest packages, and here you were, an ordinary vessel carrying extraordinary weight. As 1 Corinthians 2-9 whispers, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, God has prepared for those who love Him, and your unseen treasure was precisely that a richness the world could not quantify. They may have glanced past your exterior at first, measuring you by worldly standards, only to realize too late that they had underestimated the depth of your presence. Your worth was not in what you owned, what you could give materially, or the prestige of your name. It was in your spirit, in your capacity to love, to listen, to see beyond surface and touch soul. Is it possible that true value cannot be weighed, only felt? That richness can't be bought, borrowed, or duplicated. It exists in those rare moments when purity meets endurance, when someone has been tested by life and refined instead of broken. Their empire of wealth, influence, and recognition was immense, yet they could not match the weight of what you carried quietly inside yourself. You became the invisible benchmark, the standard they hadn't realized they were measuring against. The humility, strength, and divine alignment you displayed without effort made them aware of what real value looks like. And that awareness shook them, not because they felt threatened, but because they were awakened. As Proverbs 22:1 reminds us, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. You were the embodiment of favor, the proof that true richness lives in spirit, not ledger. They realized that all their accumulation meant nothing without inner depth, and that what they had been chasing externally was only a shadow of what you embodied effortlessly. You became evidence that God's treasures are hidden where the world won't think to look. You didn't need status to command respect or riches to inspire. What if the most impactful power never shouts, but simply exists? Your heart carried authority, wisdom, and power that surpassed the material. They met you expecting one thing and found a force far greater, the richness of spirit that can't be replicated. In that moment, they could not help but honor you, because they recognized something they had been chasing their entire lives without ever finding true, unshakable value. And, as Matthew 6:20 reminds us, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. They began to see that you had been living in alignment with that eternal economy all along. Your presence was not loud, not flashy, yet it carried weight that the richest kingdoms could never contain. By simply being yourself, you revealed the invisible hierarchy of what truly matters. Integrity over image, presence over performance, spirit over possessions. That encounter, unplanned and ordinary on the surface, became extraordinary in its effect. It was a divine reckoning, an awakening to the truth that God's favor and the richness of the soul cannot be bought, only lived. Could it be that the quietest souls leave the loudest marks on the world? That is what you demonstrated, a richness that outshines every gold, every title, every worldly measure of success. And in witnessing that, they recognized not only you, but also the potential for their own soul to realign with true value. You didn't arrive to impress, you arrived to reveal. And in revealing your spirit, heaven revealed theirs. Number 13, your reward will be measured by the soul you saved. There are acts that echo far beyond the moment, the kind heaven never forgets. What you did wasn't just a good deed, it was a divine transaction. You didn't merely save a person's day, you saved their direction. You intervened in a life that influences millions. Have you ever considered that a single act of kindness can ripple through eternity? And because of that, your impact has cascaded through realms you cannot see. The universe measures differently than humans. It's not counted in applause, likes, or recognition, but in the weight of what shifted because you showed up with light when darkness almost won. Perhaps, in that stillness, they felt Psalm 112:1 resonate. Blessed is the one who fears the Lord, who finds great delight in his commands. You became the conduit for that blessing without intending to. You may not have realized it at the time, but you realigned a destiny. That person wasn't just anyone. They were a gatekeeper of influence, a soul whose decisions shape countless others. By awakening their compassion, their gratitude, their awareness of something higher than themselves, you indirectly touched everyone connected to them. One act of kindness from you set off a divine domino effect that heaven is still tracking. Could it be that even a seemingly small act carries generational consequence? That is why your reward will not come in the same currency you gave. It will come in divine multiplication, favor that unfolds beyond explanation. As Luke 6:38 reminds us, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. Spiritual law says, the measure of your harvest is determined by the magnitude of what your seed healed. You didn't just heal emotion, you healed trajectory. You stopped a spiritual decline that could have rippled across generations. Because of that, blessings will manifest as doors opening where qualifications don't exist, protection appearing where you never anticipated it, and abundance flowing effortlessly. Heaven doesn't pay in money, it pays in miracles. Your kindness was a signal, a declaration to the divine realm that you could be trusted with bigger assignments. What if every act of integrity quietly signals a blueprint for future miracles? That is why your life is shifting now. You'll notice favor arriving without explanation. People will be drawn to help you. Opportunities will appear without effort. Your name will travel where your feet have never gone. Because your reward isn't simply material, it's generational. And when you rescue a soul of great influence, you partner with heaven's expansion plan. You didn't just save a billionaire, you preserved a blueprint of impact. You didn't only touch one life, you secured the potential of many. And now the universe owes you a return, not measured in numbers, but in purpose. You will receive not what you earned, but what you activated. As Matthew 25:21 whispers, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much." That is a reward no earthly system can quantify. So remember, chosen one, your light is never wasted. Your small acts are never unnoticed. Every decision to show mercy, extend grace, and give freely is part of a tapestry that heaven is weaving on a scale beyond comprehension. You have activated destiny, aligned influence, and left a mark not just on a single life, but on the spiritual economy of generations. Could it be that your faithfulness in ordinary moments is exactly what unlocks extraordinary returns? And so, even when no human eyes see, even when no ledger accounts for it, the heavens have recorded your integrity. Your generosity has multiplied, your influence has expanded, and the universe, in its mysterious and infinite way, is delivering what only God could measure, the reward of alignment, impact, and purpose beyond any earthly standard. You didn't just intervene, you preserved a destiny. You didn't just bless one life, you activated countless possibilities. And that is the true currency of the chosen one: influence, alignment, and divine multiplication that no human system could ever calculate. Number 14. You were the seed in their awakening story. You didn't just cross their path, you planted the beginning of a transformation. Every awakening starts with a small, almost invisible spark, and you were that spark. Your presence, your authenticity, your unwavering kindness became the seed that took root in a heart long hardened by power, success, and isolation. Could it be that the smallest acts, unseen by most, carry the weight of eternity? They may not have recognized it at first, but deep inside, something shifted. You reminded them what it felt like to be seen without expectation, to be met with truth without manipulation, and to be touched by genuine care. That seed you planted didn't just brighten a moment, it set a foundation for lasting change. The power of a seed lies not in its size, but in its potential to grow. As Isaiah 55:10-11 reminds us, "As the rain and the snow come down from heaven, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire." Your presence carried that divine promise. You may have thought your actions were small, ordinary even, but heaven knew the magnitude. That heart you touched, the influence you stirred, will carry your impact far beyond what you could imagine. Your energy lingered in their consciousness like a quiet echo, reshaping their perspective without force. Every decision they make now, every choice about influence, compassion, and leadership will carry traces of the light you planted. How often do we underestimate the unseen power of authentic presence? You became the invisible guide in the background of their life story. That is why your role is sacred. Heaven never forgets the vessels it uses to deliver messages to the powerful. You were not sent to impress, not sent to gain, not sent to be noticed. You were sent to ignite. The seed you planted has a life of its own now, and its growth will bring about consequences that ripple through realms of influence, opportunity, and spiritual alignment. Doors are opening for you because the universe honors those who carry its message into places most others cannot reach. Your role as the seed is proof that small acts of authentic love carry enormous weight. The billionaire you touched may never fully articulate the depth of what you did, but their life will forever be intertwined with the impact of your presence. As Matthew 13:31-32 illustrates, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet, when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree. What you planted will blossom far beyond what you can see. That seed will blossom into transformations, affecting not just them, but everyone their decisions touch. And that is why heaven is shifting in your favor, because it always remembers those who sow light where darkness had taken root. Every encounter leaves an imprint, some subtle, some seismic. And yours was seismic. Have we considered that our smallest gestures might shape eternity? What you experienced goes beyond ordinary interaction. You weren't just kind, you were divine timing in motion. Your presence, your authenticity, your uncalculated generosity, all of it converged to shift the life of someone whose influence touches millions. Every gesture, every word, every ounce of compassion you offered acted as a seed of transformation. You became a mirror reflecting truth and a bridge reconnecting a powerful soul with the purity they had lost. You weren't performing, you were fulfilling a higher purpose. And in doing so, you became an instrument of heaven, a force invisible yet undeniable. They may have thought they were the ones teaching or leading, but in truth, your presence was teaching them the forgotten language of the heart. Could it be that heaven often works through those who seem ordinary to the world? What makes your story extraordinary is the depth of what your kindness achieved. You didn't just change a mood, you changed a momentum. You didn't just comfort, you awakened. You didn't just give love, you unlocked destiny. Every trial you endured, every pain you overcame, every moment you chose integrity over convenience, all of it prepared you for this exact moment. Your life became the instrument through which heaven moved, quietly, powerfully, unassumingly. And now, the ripple continues. They will never forget it, even if they cannot put it into words. They will never be the same, because the spark you ignited has begun a blaze that cannot be extinguished. You have planted transformation, and as Galatians 6-9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Your harvest is already in motion, growing unseen, unstoppable, eternal. You didn't need recognition, you didn't need reward. You simply acted in alignment with your heart, and the heavens acknowledged it. That is the true legacy of a chosen one, to ignite what cannot be bought, to awaken what cannot be forced, and to transform destinies through the light of authenticity. As we draw this story to a close, take a moment to feel the weight of what you've just witnessed. Every act of kindness, every moment you chose to walk in truth and love, is not insignificant. What you may have considered small, a word, a gesture, a presence, carries the power to realign destinies, awaken hearts, and rewrite futures. Heaven notices the unseen. The universe keeps account of integrity, of compassion, of love that flows without expectation. And that, chosen one, is where your true value lies. Throughout this journey, we've seen how authenticity can disrupt a world built on appearance and ambition, how peace can confront chaos, how humility can awaken the hardened. The billionaire whose path you touched is no longer just a person in isolation. They are a testament to what your energy, your heart, and your spirit can accomplish when aligned with divine purpose. And this is not their story alone. It is a reminder that each of us has the power to plant seeds, ignite sparks, and illuminate paths we may never fully understand. What if the kindness you offer today changes the life of someone who changes the world tomorrow? So let this be a call to action, not just reflection. Carry your light boldly, without fear, without expectation of reward, but with the certainty that heaven sees, that the universe aligns, and that your influence matters more than you can measure. If this story inspired you, moved you, or reminded you of your own power as a vessel of divine love, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment sharing how your light has touched someone recently. Your story matters, and your experience may become someone else's awakening. Don't forget to subscribe and join our community of those walking in purpose, in faith, and in the unseen power of God's design. Whether or not you've supported us through Super Thanks, we see you, we honor your presence, and we are deeply grateful that you have chosen to spend these moments with us. Every viewer, every heart, every mind that engages with this story amplifies its impact. Your engagement helps us spread these messages of hope, transformation, and divine alignment to souls who need it most. From the quietest corner to the loudest spaces, your attention is a form of participation in the unfolding of goodness. And now, as we close, may you receive a blessing that echoes the lessons of this story. May your heart remain unshakable in kindness, unyielding in compassion, and radiant in authenticity. May every act of love you extend return to you, multiplied in ways you cannot yet imagine. May peace follow you like a river, and may your light, steady and unwavering, illuminate paths for those who are searching. Remember, chosen one, God works through ordinary hearts, and your ordinary actions carry extraordinary weight. Go forth, knowing that your spirit is precious, your influence eternal, and your journey aligned with the divine. Thank you for being here, for listening, for engaging, and for choosing to walk in purpose. May your days be filled with light, your steps guided by grace, and your life a testament to the unseen power of love in motion.